Mount & Blade 2 Bannerlord is a mix between strategy, RPG and medieval slasher game made by Tailworlds Entertainment, an indie dev studio from Turkey that has around 130 employees. After more than 10 years of development, the game has finally been fully released and is now available on PC, Xbox and Playstation. In this review, we are going to have a look at how far Bannerlord has come, where its strengths and weaknesses are, and if it's worth it for you to pick it up at this point in time. So without any further ado, let's jump right into it. Bannerlord has 4 different game modes to offer: Campaign, Sandbox, Custom Battles, and Multiplayer. Campaign and Sandbox are the 2 main game modes in the game, and honestly, they're pretty much the same except some minor differences. The gameplay loop in these 2 modes is as follows. You move around the world map, recruit troops, earn money, interact with NPCs, fight battles, join or create a kingdom, siege castles and towns, and increase your wealth and influence. The standard perspective in Bannerlord is a top-down view of Calradia, a continent with 8 different factions. The interesting part, however, is that the game is not restricted to this top-down view only. Fighting battles, sieges and tournaments, and exploring cities can be done in third person, which is something that stands out from other medieval strategy games. Battles can display up to 1,000 troops at the same time on screen, and you as their commander have full control over them. The game mode Custom Battles lets you create and fight your own open field battles and sieges. Bannerlord also features multiplayer game modes, whereas this is limited to instanced PvP matches of different types, like duels, skirmishes and such. Unfortunately, the campaign or sandbox mode cannot be played co-op. However, a co-op mode is being worked on by the modding community as we speak. Combat in Bannerlord is a unique mixture between medieval slasher combat and real-time strategy. Melee combat is based on directional attacks. There are 4 different attack directions that need to be matched for a successful block. The game has a held block system for weapons as well as for shields, whereas shields auto-block attacks from every direction. There are also feints, chambers, perfect parries, kicks and bashes. The attack animations are very stiff and almost look comical, which can at times be a bit immersion breaking. The ranged combat includes bows, crossbows and throwing weapons. The single player combat is very easy to cheese. But not only the combat, the whole game has many exploit possibilities. I wouldn't say that this is bad per se, however. At the end of the day, Bannerlord is a single player roleplay game at first, and you can decide for yourself if cheesing the AI is something you want to do in your playthrough or not. One thing that I'm not a big fan of is that most weapons, even cut-type weapons, have hit stop, which in combination with the shield auto parry makes fighting in tight areas often claustrophobic and weapons get stuck a lot. But in general, for a single player game, the melee combat system in Bannerlord is a massive step up if you are used to games with generic hack and slash combat systems, which are basically 90% of all melee combat games on the market. Multiplayer in Bannerlord has been pretty dead during early access, with only a few hundred people online across all servers during weekend prime time. The PvP combat in Bannerlord has many issues that could fill its own video. The short and straightforward truth is that it is simply not fun, at least in its current form. The developers recently allowed multiplayer modding, and people can now also host custom servers. So maybe this breathes some life into the multiplayer community, but only time can tell. The second pillar of Bannerlord combat, besides melee, ranged and mounted combat, is the part where you can command and micro your troops in battle. In fact, you can play the game as commander and not hit a single enemy ever during a playthrough. Troop microing happens via keyboard shortcuts. So there are some predefined unit groups that you can move around and give different commands during a battle. The AI works pretty well in open battles. In sieges, however, commanding large armies can sometimes be a hassle. Tailworlds has definitely improved AI pathing and aggro over the past year or so, but the AI still has its problems in tight spaces like ladders and small corridors. I also wish you could manually assign units to different formations, instead of just having different groups of unit types. That was a really useful feature that for some reason was scrapped some time ago during early access. The combat and troop balance in Bannerlord is also something that could need further refinement. Some cultures simply have much better units than others for no good reason. Archery as a whole is still overpowered, which is true for both stationary and mounted archers. Having 100 of the best archers in the game is better than pretty much any other troop composition you could think of. Visually, Bannerlord is obviously a massive uplift from its 12-year-old predecessor, Mount and Blade Warband. For 2022 standards, however, the game only looks alright. Not terrible, but also not amazing. Something that Tailworld did a good job with is making the different cultures distinct. Clothing, armor and architecture of the different cultures are really well made and definitely a highlight of this game. Cities and castles look good, and you can tell that they put a lot of effort into creating them. Unfortunately, however, there is not much reason to explore cities in third person, which is actually one of my main gripes with Bannerlord. Pretty much everything you can do in a city in third person, you can also do via the city menu in the world view, which is a huge missed opportunity in my opinion. When I say Bannerlord's graphics are only average, one has to keep in mind that the battles can have up to 1000 units on screen at the same time. So one can't really expect that characters have the same graphic fidelity and animation set as the main character of a modern AAA single-player story-driven action RPG game. When it comes to performance and optimization, Bannerlord is definitely more CPU than GPU heavy, at least at 1080p. The game has gotten several optimization passes throughout its early access phase, and with some settings, like shadows and battle size lowered, it runs fine even on mid-tier systems. In terms of bugs, Bannerlord had a very rocky start 2 years ago, when it released into early access. Character perks were not working at all, sieges were completely broken, and quests were also an absolute mess. The game has still bugs and glitches if you scratch the surface. I know people have different standards when it comes to the question how buggy is too buggy, but in my opinion, the game is now in a state where I can have a good experience without constant immersion-breaking annoyances. Furthermore, Tailwords promised to keep polishing the game post-release, and also to add new features and mechanics. The early game is in my opinion the most interesting phase of every Bannerlord playthrough. Here you decide how you build your character and lay the groundwork for everything that is to come. With 18 skills to level up, there is plenty of options to roleplay and diversify your character. You usually start to recruit some units into your party and try to make some money so you can pay them. The early game is the most diverse phase when it comes to making money. There is questing, looting, trading, tournaments, smithing and marrying. Do you like fighting tournaments? Or maybe you enjoy running around comparing prices of goods in different towns? Or you like questing? Or maybe you enjoy staring at the same window for hours and play your own little minigame called smithing. There is also workshops, caravans and the possibility to choose and recruit companions that offer different benefits to your party. In short, the early game is great, or as a popular German quote says, there is magic in every new beginning. The mid-game is the part where you got a solid party up and running, some reliable fighters that are ready to die for you. Most commonly, you either decide to fight for a kingdom as a mercenary, or once you reach clan tier 2, become a vassal. As a vassal, you are able to own cities and castles, vote for and call votes on kingdom policies, and war and peace declarations. The fief management in Bannerlord is pretty confusing for new players, and I think the UI for it needed a rework before release. The mid-game is a phase that can also be pretty fun and diverse. You manage your fiefs, aka decide what to build, find a good governor for it, and manage its garrison. And then there is war. Endless war. War declarations and peace treaties in Bannerlord are as common as pick tracks. In addition, the AI that makes these decisions is pretty bad, and you sometimes get absolute absurd outcomes. In general, you fight by yourself or in an army for influence, money, and fiefs. If you are playing the campaign, there is also the main quest that constantly pops up in your journal. The main quest is beside the fact that you have a family, the only real difference between sandbox and campaign. Without giving away too much, the story is quite underwhelming and makes you repeatedly run across the whole continent for boring fetch quests, often at the most inconvenient times possible. In my opinion, they should have either just scrapped the story completely or put some real effort into it. The late game is the part where Bannerlord content gets thin. You either are a vassal or a king, have a couple of fiefs and more money than your kids and grandkids could ever spend. In this phase of the game, there's not much to do unless you want to set your own roleplay goals, like eradicating a certain faction from the map or even conquering the whole map. Many were hoping that Tailworlds would implement new late game features like a fleshed out diplomacy system, but that did not happen during the past 2 years of early access, and I highly doubt it ever will. Conquering one castle and city after another, repeating the same task for 50 times in a row, gets old rather quick. This is also my number one complaint with the game currently: the lack of late game content. The good thing, at least for PC players, is that Bannerlord has powerful modding tools, and people are able to create their own Bannerlord content, which brings us to the next point. The modding scene in Bannerlord is massive. The Mount & Blade series has a long history that has always been big on modding. There are mods that add gameplay mechanics or alter existing ones, and there are also so-called total conversion mods. The former can fill content holes and add things like alliances, religions, education, overhauled combat AI, expanded troop trees, and many more features. The amount of content and replay value that has already been and will be created by the modding community is gigantic. Then we have the total conversion mods that use Bannerlord's core and create an entirely different game. Many of the projects that are in the works are absolutely mind-blowing. Like for example the upcoming Kingdoms of Arda mod, which plays in Middle-earth and has custom storylines, campaigns, troops and the like. There's also some upcoming Game of Thrones mods, a Star Wars mod, a Vikings mod, a Wheel of Time mod, some Japanese themed mods, just to name a few. Unfortunately, it seems these mods will only be available for PC players. The last official statement about modding for Xbox and PlayStation players I could find was from early 2022, and by the looks of it, there are no plans of bringing modding to consoles. So if you have both platforms and wonder whether to buy the game on console or PC, I definitely recommend it to buy it on PC, just for the mods. Alright, so as a quick summary, here are the good and ugly parts of Mount & Blade 2 Bannerlord. Bannerlord has an incredibly fun, one-of-a-kind gameplay loop that currently no other game on the market can offer. The game has a fleshed out PvE combat system that is better than almost any other 2-button mash auto-combo combat system. The performance is pretty good, and battles with up to 1000 units can be rendered even on mid-tier systems. Cultures are well developed and have good looking and distinct clothing, armor and architecture. And last but definitely not least, modding. The troop balance in Bannerlord is not very good. Some cultures simply have better troops than others. Archery in general is still overpowered and outshines all the other classes. The game is still a bit buggy at times. There's really nothing to do inside towns, which makes the assets wasted. The campaign is mediocre at best. The multiplayer is not great, and in its current form only suited for role-playing purposes. The endgame is monotonous and grindy, with little options other than doing the same things over and over again. And no modding for consoles. If it wasn't for the dedicated modding community, I would give the game a 7 out of 10. I see Bannerlord as a robust base frame that can be fun for several different playthroughs on its own. With current mods, however, and what I have seen about the upcoming amazing total conversion mods, I give the game a 9 out of 10. Guys, definitely let me know in the comments what you think of Bannerlord. Are you happy with the release, and how would you rate this game in its current state? If you enjoyed this video, then please leave a like and make sure to subscribe for future medieval slasher content. As always, thank you all for watching and see you soon.